ready. And I'm recording. So for all of you out there, we can't see you. It's a webinar, so only you can see us. I think we'll wait one more minute though before we get started. I think the rain has stopped, although I'm in Bethel, so I'm not sure about down at Twin Oaks Elementary. Is it raining down there? Or at the museum, Robin?
It's still a little cloudy here.
Cloudy. Oh, Miss Denisa says no rain. Well, yeah, it's kind of mixed, hovering around both clouds and sun. Okay, well, I think we will get started. I hope everyone had a little dinner, a little bite to eat, and homework is all done. This is our virtual family STEM night. My name is Justin, and I work with Connected Lane County, and I'm joined with Robin from the Museum of Natural Cultural History. And as some of you were tuned in earlier to other activities, we also partner with Mount Pisgah Arboretum, as well as Eugene Science Center and many others to bring you hands-on STEM activities. And so that's why we're here. Now you may notice that this is kind of a different Zoom than maybe you're used to in your classes, but this is a webinar, which means you can watch us. We are called the panelists, but we cannot see you, and which also means we can't really talk to you or see your activities when you're making them, which is kind of disappointing. But at the same time, if you do need to communicate with us, you can put your questions or something you want to share into the chat, and we will communicate that way. It does work. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Robin from the Museum of Natural and Cultural History.
All right, thanks, Justin. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure we have it full. All right, can you see it there?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So like Justin said, my name is Robin, and I am the education coordinator here at the Museum of Natural and Cultural History. We are located on the University of Oregon campus. So I am coming to you live from inside our exhibit hall. We're closed to the public right now, so I thought I'd join you from our fun space inside the museum. And I'm excited to join you all tonight and do some activities, some STEM activities. Let's see. There we go. So here's a picture of the museum. I hope some of you have been able to visit us. If not, we are open to the public, so feel free to check it out. We're open Thursday through Sunday, and we have some fun family-friendly activities on Fridays and Saturdays this summer. So come and check it out. We're doing outdoor activities. We'll start off with a little question. Does anyone know what this animal is right here in the corner? Any guesses? You can add it to the chat. What is this big animal over here? Anybody? Oh, good guess. Okay, so we got mammoth or mastodon, mammoth. You are correct. It is a mammoth. It's a Columbian mammoth, which used to roam around Oregon many years ago. They've since gone extinct, but we have our mammoth and a baby mammoth out front of the museum. So that's a good way to find the building on campus. And here at the museum, we always like to start off with a land acknowledgement. The museum and the University of Oregon are both located on Kalapuya Ilihi, which is the traditional indigenous homelands of the Kalapuya people. And we like to honor and recognize all of the indigenous people that still call the Willamette Valley home. So with that, we will move on to our activities, which here at the museum, we also love our ducks. And so tonight's activity is all about ducks and some of their cool adaptations that they have to help them survive in their environment. So we're gonna focus a little bit on the duck. Oops. And so everybody should have received one of these activity kits from your teacher or from your school. So if you don't have it handy, take a moment and grab it now, or you can find hopefully some of these materials at home and follow along with the activity. but I'll also be showing you the activity steps as we move forward. So in the activity kit, you should have an instruction sheet. There are 2 feathers, a pipette, some cotton balls, and a few paper cups, some rubber bands, and cooking oil. And the item that is not included in the kit, but you definitely need, is a cup, preferably a clear cup filled with some water. So make sure you have water in a cup. If you don't have that, grab it really quick if you can, because that will help you with our activity this evening. Right. So we'll start off with, what is an adaptation? So take a moment and think about it. What is an adaptation? And we're thinking about animals. So why would an animal need an adaptation, and what is an adaptation? Does anyone want to put a guess into the chat box for us? Any guesses? Maybe you're all going and collecting cups of water really quick. Adaptations. When an animal can change in response to its environment. Ooh, that is a good guess. Good explanation of an adaptation. Yeah. So the definition that we have for adaptation, they are behavioral or physical characteristics of an animal that help it survive in its environment. So something that helps it survive, it could be something that an animal has on its body, or something that an animal does to help it survive, maybe avoiding predators or hunting prey or foraging food, or just staying warm or cool depending on the environment that it's in. So thinking about us, what are some adaptations that a human might have to help us survive in our environment? A big one, we have eyes, so we can see. We have lungs to help us breathe. We have thumbs, which are a pretty cool adaptation to have. It helps you pick things up. You can hold things and grab things, so it makes it easier to hold on to something with your thumb in place. We have legs and feet to help us move around. So those are just some of the adaptations that we might have as humans to help us survive in our environment. And animals have different types of adaptations to help them survive. So we're going to take a look at a few. Body shape is a big one. So the shape of an animal's body can help it survive. Looking at the 2 animals that we have here on the screen, we have a small hummingbird, which the shape of this helps it fly, but the beak or the bill of the hummingbird also helps it collect nectar out of a flower. So having that really long beak and a long tongue can help it. It's an adaptation to pull nectar out of a flower. And then we have our giraffe here, which also has an adaptation of a really long neck. And that is to help it reach up and collect leaves and plant material high off of trees. So the long neck helps it forage for food. Protective coloration is another great animal adaptation. I don't know if you guys can see, but there is an actual animal on this tree bark right here. We've got a toad, and it blends in really well. It's got some good camouflage to help it avoid predators and to just kind of stay safe. We also have a snowy owl here in the snow, blends in really well and helps it hide without having to maybe burrow into something or find shelter. It can just kind of hide in plain sight because of the coloration that it is. Feeding behavior can be a really great adaptation depending on the types of food. If they are a forager, like a deer here nibbling on plants, or if it is an animal that eats other animals. We've got a humpback whale here, and they have a really cool adaptation to help it scoop up food from the oceans. So a humpback whale will actually swim around in big circles and kind of pool some fish and get them into a big ball. And then the humpback comes from underneath and scoops and opens its mouth, and its neck can actually billow out and become much larger. And that'll help it scoop up all of those fish so it can get a big mouthful of food. So that's a really great adaptation that it has to help it collect more food rather than eating one little tiny fish at a time. It can eat a whole bunch. And then finally, another form of adaptation is reproduction. So how do animals reproduce and have offspring, have baby animals? So some animals like an elephant or a mammoth reproduce and they give birth to a live offspring, maybe one or two at a time. And it takes a long time to then care for and raise their offspring. Whereas other animals like a bird might lay eggs. We've got a nest here with some eggs in it. And they can have multiple offspring at one time where they care for them for a little bit and then they're out of the nest and off on their own. So different types of adaptations depending on the environment that they live in and how many offspring they have. So those are some just different types of adaptations. But let's focus back on the duck. So what are some adaptations that a duck has to help it survive? And it might be helpful to think about the type of environment that ducks live in. So ducks are typically in rivers and streams and ponds. Maybe in your neighborhood park, you might see some ducks wandering through there. So what are some adaptations that a duck has to help it survive? And you can put your guesses or your answers into the chat. Any guesses? Looking at the picture there, are there any parts on the duck here that stand out? Oh, we've got a good one. Okay, webbed feet. Yep. Yes, webbed feet. That is a huge adaptation for a duck or any other animal that lives in or near water. The webbed feet can help them swim around, paddle around. That is a great adaptation. What else? Can we think of anything else? Other things on our bird, on our duck here? Waterproof feathers. Yes, you guys are ahead of the game. Good. So the feathers on a duck help it survive. It's adapted to living in that wet and sometimes cold environment because of those feathers. They also have some other cool adaptations. You can see their coloration. We've got a male duck here and a female duck here. And the female duck is a little bit more camouflaged coloring so they can hide in their nest and in their reeds a little bit easier. The bill of the duck is also a good adaptation. So it's nice and flat. So when they're feeding, they're actually going down into the water and they're trying to munch at things in the water. So that flat bill gives them more surface area to munch at things and pull stuff out of the mud. So it's a good adaptation. And ducks do have oil on their body. And that is the part that we're going to focus on for our activity today, is looking at the feathers and looking at the oil glands that a duck has. So for that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's see, and I'm going to pull up my tray for our activity. Let's see if you guys can see that okay. Always a little different. All right. So we've got our materials here from the activity kit. So hopefully you have the same materials, or you might have similar materials at home that you can use. We have our 2 feathers that came in the activity kit, one big and one little, just to kind of be able to look at the different types of feathers. We have some cotton balls. We have our packet of cooking oil. If you don't have the little packet of cooking oil, you can use just regular cooking oil that you might have, olive oil. We have a pipette here. And then I have a clear cup of water. In the activity kit, we gave you little paper cups, but I figured the clear cups were a little bit easier for you to see what I'm doing in the cups with the different liquids. So we've got our setup here. Hopefully you have a similar setup at home. And we're going to start with our feathers. So taking a look at the feathers here, I want you to look at them really closely. Observe the different parts of the feather. Might be easier to see that one. And on our feather here, this part down here at the end, The very soft kind of downy feathers, those are warm feathers that keep the duck warm as long as they stay dry. So it's really important for the downy feathers to stay dry because that insulates them, it keeps them warm. And they do that with their other feathers. It makes like a nice coat for the duck. You can kind of pull the feather apart. See how it comes apart there? You can kind of pull those little sections apart, but then you can zip them back up. You can zip up the feather and it creates a nice coat again. So being gentle, you can kind of test out your feather, see how it pulls apart, and then you can push it back together. So you can examine your duck feather. And then the first thing we're going to try is putting a drop of water onto our duck feather and seeing what happens. So I'm going to use my pipette and get a little bit of water. I've got my duck feather here. I'm going to put a drop of water on top. I don't want to do it too close to my computer screen because I don't want water on my computer. But if you can see it, especially if you're trying it at home, you can look really closely and you'll see that the drop of water, it stays as a water bead right on top of the feather. So it's not moving through the feather. It's sitting right on top of the feather as a drop of water. So that's the waterproof nature. You can see it just rolled off onto my hand there. That's the waterproof coating of the duck feather. So now to kind of examine the difference between the two, use one of your cotton balls, take your water again, put some water onto the cotton ball. And what happens to our cotton ball? It soaks up a little bit of the water. So the cotton is not waterproof. It doesn't have that nice coat to it. So it soaks it in. And to kind of show that a little bit better, you can take your whole cotton ball and plop it into your cup of water. And eventually it sinks, right? It doesn't float, it sinks. So now it's all waterlogged. That cotton ball is now full of water and it's sunk to the bottom of our cup. So it's not waterproof. Got a lot of water in it. So one cotton ball down. So what we want to do for our next bit is use our oil here. Take your oil and pour it into another cup. You can use the little paper cups that you have or another clear cup. It's just easier to see. But you can open up your oil packet carefully and then pour it into your cup. So we'll get all of our oil in. And if you have more oil at home, feel free to use a little bit more just to make sure you have enough for your experiment. It does get a little messy, so just be careful. It's now all over my hands. So just something to keep in mind. So now we've got our oil, a little bit of oil in our cup here. We've got water, oil, and our feather. And we're going to put one of our cotton balls into the cup of oil. And I want you to guys think about it, take a guess, make a hypothesis. What's going to happen when we cover our cotton ball in oil, and then we're going to take it and put it into the water. So we'll see what happens when we coat our cotton ball, which the first one, when we put it in the water, it just soaked up all the water, sunk to the bottom. What happens if we coat our cotton ball in oil? Make sure you get all the sides. It's easier said than done. Soak it up. Oops. So our cotton ball here covered in oil, and then we drop it into our water. You can see it floats. So the oil acts as a barrier. You can see our cotton ball there floating in the water. The oil acts as a barrier to keep the water out of the cotton ball. So the middle of the cotton ball is actually still dry. It's still just the cotton. So it might have soaked in a little bit, but the water didn't get in at all. The water was held out because of the oil as the barrier. So the same thing happens with a duck and its feathers. A duck has a gland at the base of its tail, and it'll rub its bill on the end of its tail and get some oil on it, and then it spreads it across the feathers and makes that barrier. It keeps that same nice coat, so that way the water doesn't get in to the rest of the downy feathers, the warm feathers, to help keep it nice and warm and dry. So that's one of the adaptations that it has to help it survive in its wet and watery environment, especially here in Oregon when it can get really wet and really cold during the winter. You want to be able to stay nice and dry while still being in the environment that you're in where your food is. One of the other things you can try is taking your pipette and taking some of the water and adding it back to the oil. I don't have too much oil left, but if you have some oil, you can put some water in and just see what happens when you try to put oil and water together. We get some interesting interactions with the water and the oil. You'll notice they don't mix. They like each other too much. It's kind of hard to see. But as you're mixing it, you'll notice that the oil and the water repel. They repel each other. They don't like to be near each other. So that's a really good adaptation for the duck to have, is to make sure that the water isn't soaking into the feathers because of that oil coating. Now, not all oils are the same. So sometimes if you've heard about oil spills or oil from maybe like a car or other machinery, if it gets into the environment, it can really do some damage to the animals because there are different types of oils, and that oil can break down and actually lets the water in and it can harm the ducks and other things like that. So that's why we want to make sure to keep those motor oils and other types of harmful oils out of our environment. But they are different than the type of oil that a duck has to help it stay waterproof. All right, so that was kind of our experiment for this evening. I'm curious of how your experiment went. Does anyone want to share in the chat how they were able to do with their duck feathers and their oil and water? I wish we were able to see you all. Anybody want to share? Looks like we have a handful of students still on. Anybody? All right, any questions about our duck feather or our oil gland that a duck has? Ooh, the water beat it up on, or in the oil cup. Okay, good. So you put some of the water into the oil one, it did the same thing. It made those little beads. Same thing maybe when you put the drop of water on the feather, it beat it up. Awesome, good. So one other activity with the materials that you have in your kit, your materials came in a Ziploc bag and you had a rubber band in there as well. So there's another activity that you can try. This one requires a tub of water. So if you have a tub of water, or you could fill up your sink with water, some other just type of container with water, you put your hand in the plastic bag and kind of seal it up with the rubber band. And this is basically like the webbed foot of the duck. So you can see what it's like to push water with your webbed foot rather than just your hand. So you can try the two. So try pushing water with your hand and just your fingers open, and then try pushing the water with the webbed foot with your plastic Ziploc bag on your hand, and see the difference between the two. And this will show you adaptation of a webbed foot and how it can be very helpful to swim. So some of you might be swimming around and using flippers. Same idea, you can make your own little flipper or webbed foot with your plastic bag. So those are the couple of activities that we had included. I just want to remind everybody that the museum is open to the public. So if you want to come and visit and see our giant ground sloth that we have here and some of the other really cool things that we have in our museum, please do so. We're open Thursday through Sunday with fun outdoor activities for families on Fridays and Saturdays all throughout the summer, looking at our different megafauna, our giant animals and their cool adaptations, as well as dinosaurs. So be sure to check out our website, come visit us, and explore the rest of the animal adaptations that we have here at the museum.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was fantastic. And thank you to those of you who are sending your thanks as well for the activity. Yeah, putting this all together and getting those kits out to you, it's all really, really enjoyable for us to be able to spend time together, even though we can't see you at the webinar format, I know. But hopefully next time it'll be in person, right? Well, I guess that's the last of our activities for this evening and for our virtual family STEM nights. I am going to put one link in the chat for any parents, family members there. It's 3 questions. It takes 1 minute, but it gives us some feedback on how we're doing on these events. And that's about all we have time for. So from Lane County and the Museum of Natural Cultural History, Mount Pisgah, and Eugene Science Center, thank you all for joining us and tuning in on this June evening. And we hope you have a nice rest of your school days and have a wonderful summer. Take care.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.